So welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this morning's keynotes. And if you're just joining us now, fear not, because we will be making the recordings available over on the UMI platform. So yeah, don't worry about that. We're kicking things off this afternoon with a panel discussion on some of the key challenges facing businesses in the game sector today. So we're going to be talking about things like talent attraction and retention, diversity and inclusion, protecting intellectual property, and also kind of innovation, R&D as well. So joining me are four experts on these issues. So we've got Sam Collins, who is the head of commercial and membership at Yuki, someone we've worked really closely with throughout this campaign. We've also got Sally Blake, who is the CEO of Silent Games. So she'll be able to give a good overview of how things are on the ground as someone who's actually running a games business. And then we're joined by Oliver Kicks, who is a principal at RLC Ventures, focused on their investment in games companies, and Tim Repper-Davies as well, who's a partner at Sheridan's and a legal advisor to many game studios. So welcome, guys. I think we've got you all here, haven't we? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so let's just jump straight in, as I'm conscious that we haven't got a particularly long amount of time. There's a lot to get through. So I want to keep this discussion quite open, but I'm going to start on the kind of talent attraction issue, as that is something that came up in the keynotes as being quite an important one. Obviously, it's been in the news a lot recently about these kind of labor shortages, which probably just magnifies the issue that games companies face, because obviously they need these highly specialist tech people to make their games, who are in short supply at the best of times. So if I can just bring Sam in on this point first, in terms of the conversations that you have, Sam, with Yuki's members, is sort of talent attraction and getting the right skills, is that a challenge that keeps coming up again and again?
Yeah, hello to everyone, and thanks, Richard, for inviting me here, and hello, fellow panelists. Yeah, a really interesting question to start with. And if you think about the conversations that I have regularly with studios, it always used to be that access to finance was the number one problem. That was the number one concern, and access to talent was maybe 3 or 4 on their sort of priority list. Well, at the moment, access to talent is number one. It's the number one challenge. There's just over 2,500 vacancies in the UK. If you look at Games Jobs Live to see where they're distributed around the UK, you can get a sense for that. Do we have the talent in the UK at the moment? No. Can we bring it in from overseas? Yes, but there are challenges and there's barriers, but you can get it. We're seeing more and more people actually being employed, self-employed, working overseas and working for UK companies. But government's belief that we can just throw money at a talent pipeline, that to come through, and there's and I'll stop in a second, let everyone else talk. There's so many different ways that you can bring young talent and nurture it and develop it through, but it's going to take some time. So yeah, huge issue at the moment, particularly in the programming and that top end talent end. Yeah, huge challenges.
Development end. Fair enough. And Sally, I guess to come on to you, what has your experience been like? Have you been able to find the right people to come and join you at Silent Games? Are you guys recruiting at the moment? Is that something that you're looking at?
Yes, we are. We've been quite fortunate, actually. We had a partnership with Teesside University, so we've got a lot of talent from there. We were involved in their internship program, and so somebody that worked with us in the very early stages when we were a startup, they have joined the company full time. I've been in the Northeast for it's over 10 years now as well, so I know a lot of the game developers locally, get involved in a lot of the game developer events here. So I knew a lot of people from Ubisoft and other companies that I worked at. So we've hired some people from there who wanted a change. So we've been quite lucky. But that's one of the reasons why it's good to build a company where you have roots and where you know people. And yeah, we're hiring at the moment. So we've got online programmer and game designer roles up at the moment. So we started small and we got a big investment in November 2020. So we've gone from like 3 people to 18 people in the last year. So yeah, our plan is to continue to grow moving forward. And yeah, it's been good for us, but I know it's been difficult to hire, especially over the pandemic. We've had to do a lot of stuff remotely, which normally you do face to face. So there is those challenges as well.
Yeah, and it is Sally, those sort of development skills that are most in demand for you guys and probably for other companies as well.
Yeah, definitely. Programming and some of the more difficult roles are things like technical art and technical animation and things like that, but visual effects as well. But we got lucky knowing people for those roles. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And and just again, Sally, do the sort of the game engines that you're able to use, does that sort of take a little bit of the development pressure off, because there's obviously these, Unreal and Unity engines, or do you still require people with the expertise who know how to use those to make games?
Yeah, normally there's an additional requirement that people are familiar with Unreal for us. So there are some people when they start, they use Unity. That just seems to be one that people start with. So yeah, we do have a necessity for Unreal skills, which can cut a portion of the candidates out sometimes. But I think game engines are a lot more accessible these days. There's a lot of, they're free to start learning, and there's a lot of free tutorials and things out there. So I remember trying to start learning game development when I was really young, and the only thing really out there was kind of things like Blender. And back then, Blender was very complicated for someone very young, and it was more an animation and modeling program. So there's just a lot more now for people to learn. So I am finding that people do usually have the Unreal skills we need. And at university, they'll be using either Unreal or Unity. So usually they do have those skills.
Yeah, that's good to hear that the sort of education's quite closely aligned to the needs of industry, as I know that's not always the case with fast moving sectors. So that's really good to hear. And
yeah,
Oliver, in terms of from kind of an investor's point of view, you guys invested at the very early stage in games companies. So in terms of the emphasis that's put on the management team and something that you look at very, very closely, is kind of like talent strategy and things like that something that you're looking at as well, to make sure that if you guys come in with the investment, that they are going to be able to
Yeah, definitely. Sorry if there's a bit of background noise. Apologies for that. Yeah, we're currently working with around 6 studios in the UK. And when assessing any investment opportunity, we want to be really sure that the management team, CEO, CTO, have experience in building and hiring teams, and also not just kind of putting people together in the first place and incentivizing them in the correct ways, but also having long-term strategies for development and retaining top talent. This is an issue we're seeing across not just the games portfolio, so we're pretty broad in terms of our focus, doing everything from B2B SaaS, fintech, and also wider entertainment industry. And the limit on supply for quality talent right now, or at least the competition for that, is at levels we've never seen before. So you've either got to be paying up. Not everyone can do that in the early days. So finding people that are well aligned, or hiring creatively through your network or prior experience in referring candidates through to your team is like something we really do look to focus on. And yeah, I don't see this problem going away whilst there's such competition in the market for great talent.
And I guess, like you say, competition among other industries as well in the B2B SaaS space, which is, I know, another area that you guys go into quite heavily. So I suppose the games industry, as well as games companies competing with other games companies, they're also competing with tech companies and SaaS companies and everything else. So
of course,
one of the benefits is that it's probably perceived as being more fun to work for a games company than perhaps those other players.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think, one of the positives, I guess, on the flip side is as more money flows into earlier stage companies, they grow, they go through sort of seed, Series A financing roles and begin to grow. They produce like more talent who spin out and want to either start their own things. And we're really starting to see that flywheel begin to take effect here in the UK, with a number of people recycling back into their own projects or joining others in the early days.
Yeah, so hopefully as the industry sort of matures, some of those skills gaps will be closed up because of the level of investment that's coming in. That's quite positive. So in terms of moving on to another key area, which is something that I know that Ian's very passionate about, intellectual property. So which is of course why a lot of people end up founding their own studios to develop IP. So Tim, I know this is an area that you advise in a lot, and I really liked what you've said previously when I've spoken to you about how the value of a games business is really tied up in its IP. So could you just talk a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're right, Richard. I mean, all games businesses are basically IP businesses. Everything that goes into making a game, the code, the art, music, animation, everything else is all a form of intellectual property. Notably copyright. But then it's also beyond that. It's also the studio's brand, trademarks, names, logos for the studio and the game sort of going forward. So if people are like looking for investment, then obviously making sure that you own the IP, you own everything in the game that you say you own is naturally really important.
Yeah, and Sam, in terms of all of the studios that are Yuki's members, is sort of IP development one of their sort of top priorities, if you like, going into it, or are some of them happy to license other IP, and there's quite a broad mix. How do you sort of see that?
Important, but they're often seen these days as a route to securing a decent level of investment, as we heard earlier from Ian and Bobby, both saying, if you develop your own IP, you have something which has tangible value. So if you're looking to get investment, that's something that you should really be focusing on. That said, one of the big major acquisitions recently from Sumo, they have limited IP themselves. It's all making games, third-party development skills for other people, and they've done brilliantly out of that. And we're very good at making games for other people in this country as well. So there's a little bit of both there, but I think a drive towards creating your own IP moment and should be trying to encourage. The question is, do we have the infrastructure and the support so that people can actually commercially exploit that IP? There's always someone out there who's trying to take your IP and monetize it for you. Do you have the right protections in place? And that goes beyond perhaps just the traditional game downloads, but what about merchandise? What about people trying to generate NFTs and commercialize individual items out of your IP? There's a whole world out there that we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on to protect IP. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a key area for you guys, and to encourage the companies that you're working with to be developing their IP. And I guess maybe as well, Sam, sort of taking the game, which is the sort of the first point of call when we think about IP, and like you say, growing that out into the worlds that many games now are. So are you kind of actively encouraging people to think beyond the game and into what other areas of sort of creative development that they might be able to generate IP from?
Yeah, these are valuable items. Why wouldn't you look at other sectors and other markets that you can generate commercial revenue from? I mean, other sectors are very good at doing it. Games perhaps been a little bit behind other industries, film and TV, producing all of the other associated products. So I think there's something there. But something I did want to throw into this point, we talk about a shortage of talent, the challenges of IP. These are all slightly negative things, dare I say. Just to like a good number, those that know me will know that. I mean, if you look at the growth of the games industry, and this is where we have these sort of growing pains, you could say, full-time employees now in the UK is over 73,000. That's doubled in the last 3 years. Now, that's an incredible number. Why is it doubling? It's because games companies in the UK are being successful. They're making great content. They're reaching new international markets. Investment is coming into the UK. So the overall picture is brilliant. Demand is increasing. But with it comes growing pains. How are we making sure that we are growing our businesses in the right structured way? And I think that's an important consideration. But the backdrop to this is it's successful. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, and is obviously a key part of why we were so interested in launching this campaign. To really put a spotlight on for people outside the industry who may not be thinking about games as much to pay up and sit up and listen to what's going on in the game sector, because I think 10 or 15 years ago it really wasn't on people's radar as much as it is now. I mean, Ollie, I don't know if I can bring you back in on that. Is in terms of RLC and its sort of history, have games always been something that they've seen as an important investment proposition, or is this something that's been more recent?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, it's been particularly interesting, and actually only an area we've been actively investing in for the last 12 to 14 months or so. I think one of the main things, like foundational to our firm's DNA, is like backing really, really strong founders with incredible domain expertise, and big, ambitious kind of goals for their businesses. So that's the commonality between all of our sectors. But suddenly when we realized, like, I had a personal interest in games, with relatively long standing, and we've just seen like a number of successful breakout businesses across the UK and Europe, and the global, obviously, adoption off the back of COVID has seen, you know, a lot of these trends speed up, and we were kind of looking at the landscape here in the UK and realizing, aside from some incredible angels out there who are really doing some brilliant work in the ecosystem for seeding a lot of these new studios and founders out there, there isn't really too much of a bridge between angels and institutional capital, with a lot of the global funds coming in a bit later up the pipe. So we think that there's a brilliant position for us to be that network, platform, and institutional bridge, essentially, for founders here, whilst also, you know, from a return standpoint, investing in one of the most exciting categories globally. Because I think, you know, games is nearly at the size of B2B SaaS spend, or will you know, get there in the coming years. And I think there's enough funds out there trying to back similar business types already, that are serving legacy enterprise solutions, etc. But, you know, there's a massive opportunity still to play. Obviously, we've seen, you know, numerous buzzwords and exciting trends coming through in the next few years, and I think there will be a bit of a cooling off, to be honest, for the next 12 to 18 months or so. But beyond that, there's just going to be left over some really incredible talent and people we want to be supporting from here on out. So that's sort of what led us into it, and we kind of very much believe that that in that thesis, and we can continue enacting it over the coming years and not going anywhere.
And Tim, a similar sort of question to you as well. You know, obviously Sheridan's is a kind of full service law firm that covers all of the different practice areas. You're obviously sort of heavily involved in the sort of computer games segment. Has that increased in terms of the firm's overall sort of business model, in terms of the number of companies that you're advising? What's the kind of trajectory that you've been on there? Was this something that was, you know, maybe just 5 or 10% of your work previously, whereas now it's the vast majority, as obviously the sector is booming, as we all know?
Yeah, of course. Well, actually, no. I mean, very fortunate that at Sheridan's, we've been advising people in the games industry for 15 plus years. So actually, when I joined like 6 or 7 years ago, I mean, I was immediately kind of like thrown into sort of that sort of world. I came from like film and TV distribution, having been, and music as well, having had stints at like DreamWorks Animation and Warner Brothers, and similar to Oliver, just had a really great passion for the games industry. So actually, I've been advising sort of games companies right from the off, and it's always been a large part of what Sheridan's has done. And yeah, while we are full service, it's been, what we've done is grown out of like the media entertainment, sectors. So yeah, music, film, and TV. Naturally, seeing even more and more game stuff, and we've had to hire and recruit more lawyers to join our team, purely to meet the demand, so we can serve our clients better. And I mean, absolutely, M&A activity and investment activity over the last like 3 years has absolutely increased, and we've definitely had to help hire in those sorts of areas to help advise clients on that. But from the commercial standpoint, from an IP standpoint, all of that sort of like stayed the same. So I think quite fortunate in that sense that I've just been able to work with games companies right from the off, and it's always been like a large part of what we and what Sheridan's do as a whole.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, and if I can just come back briefly to the sort of intellectual property side. So Sally, I know you kind of you obviously work for Ubisoft, and you left that sort of AAA environment. I know you had a number of different roles after that, but now you are sort of in charge of your own studio, developing original IP. So how big of a motivation was that for you, as it is for a lot of other games founders who have the background in AAA games, to then move into developing their own IP? Was that a big motivation for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned a lot at Ubisoft about how they create their IPs. They have a very specific strategy for doing that. And I've always loved video games. I've always wanted to make video games. And even when I was a kid, I was creating my own stories, creating my own characters and all that kind of stuff. And I always had the ambition to create a game that I wanted to play. And so myself and my co-founder, we worked on this concept. And it's something that we're passionate about and something that we know players will love because it's something that we feel, passionate about, something we like, something that we would play ourselves. So yeah, I definitely think the having control over your IP and making your own game is definitely a huge reason why a lot of developers will start their own studio once they have that experience and that knowledge that they've gained elsewhere. Yeah, it always comes down to the game for me, first and foremost. Obviously, there's other motivations as well, like the people side of it. I've worked as a producer for a long time and worked in large teams and helped people grow and progress in their careers, which is hugely rewarding as well. So I think the two of those go hand in hand, really, in terms of motivations to starting your own studio.
Perfect. Okay. And just coming back to you, Sally, really on issues around diversity, which I know is something that you're incredibly passionate about through the Women Making Games initiative that you obviously founded. At a very sort of bird's eye view kind of level, do you think the games industry is moving in the right direction? Having previously been regarded as being quite a male-dominated industry, do you think it is continuing to become a more inclusive pace for women and other groups to work in, particularly because there is now support networks like Women Making Games?
I think so. I think there's still quite a lot that needs to change, and I think progress is slow in some areas. But obviously, I've been in games for over 10 years now. In the past, it was even very difficult to talk about this as a topic. Like, people just weren't interested in it. And in some regards, it's kind of gone the other way. Like, there's things that I will get invited to just because I'm a woman, and that's also not a good thing. You want to be invited because of your expertise and your knowledge. And so I think there's a balance to be had, certainly. And I think just having the support networks and having people to talk to about certain issues, like a lot of issues can be very specific to individuals, and you need to be able to have someone senior who maybe has gone through similar or could provide that kind of mentoring and support. I think that definitely helps. And then I guess like 6 years into my career, there was a big focus on getting people into games, but not much on retaining people and retaining talent. And so the conversations around that are changing a bit. Obviously, there's been some, I guess, to some people shocking, to me not that shocking, news stories about companies like Activision Blizzard and so on, Riot Games and things, and kind of how they have treated certain members of their development team. And now that that's out, there's a lot more conversations around that. So I think it's positive it's being discussed, but there's still a lot that needs to change in those kinds of companies where those issues are present. So yeah, and just having that support network, having someone to ask, and knowing that you're not alone in terms of getting that support, I think is very useful and important. So yeah,
of course. Sam, same sort of question to you as well. Obviously, representing games companies large and small, getting into the nooks and crannies of these teams. Do you think there is progress being made on D&I, and perhaps in line with what Sally said, what more needs to be done? I know Yuki has some initiatives in this regard. So just your thoughts on that as well.
If you think about, have to talk about that. If you think about, I'll be able to, actually I could answer the question much better in a month's time, because the second industry census gets published at the end of February. I don't think that's been announced, so I've probably accidentally revealed that. But at the end of February, there's going to be the update of this census, which is a major survey of the games industry workforce to find out sentiments and feelings. And it presented a whole raft of interesting data points. If you want to go to the Yuki website, yuki.org.uk, and look at the one that was conducted before. We've got to track progress. 50% of our players are women. Why don't we have 50% of our employees women? It just seems bizarre. And diversity is beyond the sex side. It's about ethnicity. It's about sexual orientation. We want the best of everything in our industry. We are an inclusive industry. Interesting, if you look at some of the stats from the last census, we are quite diverse when compared to other industries. Now, that's not a justification. Oh, it's all right then. But we are good. We are an embracing industry, but we need to lead from the front in this and be that much better. The last census did lead to the creation of a project called Raise the Game, which Yuki administers and delivers on behalf of the industry. And hundreds of games companies have signed up to that. They are making commitments. They are moving in the right direction. The key thing is, we don't want businesses just to sign up for it because they want to say they're doing it. They have to make tangible changes and improvements in the way that they work, their internal systems. And so that's going through at the moment. So we're moving in the right direction, but there is a long way to go. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, of course. And I think that point that you've said previously, Sally, as well, around sort of diversity making games better. And, like you say, Sam, if 50% of players are women or whatever, why wouldn't we have that reflected in the people who make the games, and then the types of games that we make as well? So I suppose it's about feeding in the diversity and inclusion into the actual content of the games as much.
But let's not assume women want to play different games from men.
Yeah,
that's not to say that the games need to be different. They just need to be representative of our audience. Now, if we can fix the employment side, that will naturally happen. There's no doubt about it. But
no, that is the key point about them being representative of the whole audience. Of course, brilliant. So I just want to ask you a little bit about sort of innovation and emerging trends. Oliver, if I can bring you in on this, as I know you're quite interested in blockchain and NFTs and this whole metaverse sort of concept as being kind of a bit of a window into the future of gaming. Do you think this is where the industry is headed in terms of things like blockchain and that being an area that you're really excited in from an investor's point of view?
Yeah, I think 12 months ago when we started looking at this stuff, it was fairly forward-looking and a bit less speculative on some of those elements. I think as a whole, the crypto and blockchain stuff has sort of been milked to death a little bit over the last few months, and there's been quite a lot of controversy and backlash as well from the traditional games audience, which I actually fully can understand. I think a lot of the concepts that are being shoved onto people, around game, like true ownership of assets or interoperability of assets, is not necessarily things that games themselves care about today. And so the way we like to look at it is, how can these trends, such as distributed ledger technology, blockchain, be utilized to bring about completely new gameplay styles that make the games themselves more fun or more engaging, and you can actually unlock completely new mechanics that weren't previously possible. We haven't seen too many examples of this to date or executed on successfully, but there are exciting kind of promises of future trends that may be coming through. So that's certainly an area that we're keeping an eye on, and we've made 2 or 3 early investments in the space. But with all of these things, we're very pre-seed focused, very founder focused. We're not expecting any of this to kind of manifest in the next sort of 12 months. And again, looking on 5 to 10 year timelines here. I think obviously Meta's movement or whole rebrand and reimaging is really quite a big statement of intent. And I think even though people aren't necessarily enamored with their practices or how they have such strong ecosystem lock-in and a lack of decentralization, as it were, of the actual environments and ecosystems, I still think, to our very first point on the panel, the talent question is really exciting there. A lot of higher quality people coming into Europe, especially where they're going to be headquartering and spearheading this movement from, is only going to be a positive, and a lot of spin outs to come from there. So keeping a keen eye on interactive entertainment, VR, and mixed reality. I think we've seen a bit of a at the tip of the iceberg with some of that stuff, and it's still pretty clunky, but I'm super excited by some of the content we've seen lately and the teams building in these spaces. So it's more about these fundamental shifts taking place, and let's try and think of these things on a 5 to 10 year horizon, and not on the 2 month to 6 month period that we're seeing a lot with the quite frothy conversations taking place at the moment. But yeah, overall I'd say crypto and the interactive entertainment side are areas we're looking at pretty closely.
Yeah, that kind of short-termism and the sort of speculation around things like NFTs, particularly, maybe sort of something to watch out for. But overall, the technologies that are making these things possible will play a role in the industry in the future. Okay. So yeah, on emerging trends, I don't know who else wants to sort of come in on anything else that they're interested by at the moment. Tim, I don't know if some of the clients that you've been working with are behind any of these exciting innovations that we're seeing happening. Is there any emerging trends that stick out for you?
I think just to echo what Oliver said, really, definitely seeing a lot more VC money going in towards the kind of like tech side of solving the interoperability problem for distributed ledger technology and blockchain. I think there's obviously been a real misunderstanding, I think, from the player bases. I mean, Rami Ismail did a great piece last week or the week before about, there's real challenges. And I think at least from, if you're, not outside of the game space, this kind of like feeling that you can just take assets out of Fortnite and then be able to put it into Halo and put it into any other game, and it's just not how it works. But I do think, we're seeing a lot of money kind of going into trying to solve, that sort of like problem. I mean, I do think, distributed ledger technology, blockchain tech is, legit. I think there's definitely real great use cases out there within gaming. What we're seeing at the minute, in terms of the NFTs is just a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a pyramid scheme, but that's not to say that NFTs, aren't going to have a purpose, in gaming and, the swapping of assets. I think long term there is something there. It's obviously just not what we're seeing right now. And I think in terms of like play to earn and GameFi, that kind of stuff, obviously there's challenges in the UK and Europe, not least from like a regulatory point of view around the world. But I guess that's again another problem that people are trying to solve. And I guess in theory, I'm not against sort of like play to earn as a model, but I think with any sort of game design, the game that you're making has to be fun. Even if people can feel like they can earn money from playing, I guess that's the ultimate user acquisition tool. But at the end of the day, if your game isn't enjoyable to play, then good luck to you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think just sorry to go back in on that on some of Tim's points. Super on point. And I think like we've seen with so many people coming through on like the play to earn, like Axie Infinity discussions, etc. Like it's we all fully understand like why they saw such like high retention and influx of players, etc. But I think this whole landscape, as I mentioned, has still got so far to go, and it is still so frontier, which is kind of crazy to say 12 years on from like when this tech first popped up. It's still like the early days. Like how long are we going to give it that excuse? But I think a little bit longer as people start to understand some of the core challenges around like scaling, be that like with layer 2 solutions or completely separate layer 1s like the Solanas and Terrors of the world, then I think we'll see some solutions and actual like exciting gameplay take place. And I think like, looking back to the MMORPGs and other games that have been around for like 20-25 years now, like the idea of these digital economies taking place actually like superseded crypto, of course, and it's really exciting to see how we could start to build like more decentralized or player-owned networks in these formats. And it's literally now just about separating value from noise, because I think we've seen the indication of potential there, but we just got to spend time like digging deep and making sure that these people are like legit a lot of the time. So that's where the challenge comes from an investor, and also I guess employees looking to go and join new projects or go and found their own things too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Richard. Well, I don't want to bore everyone to death, but with metaverse chat. But I mean, if people didn't see Bobby's talk earlier, I do think that's probably worth a watch as well in terms of the trends, especially for like AR and XR. Definitely, I think if you're thinking of metaverses and the way people think about the metaverse now, it's obviously very, I think the way people think about it, especially for me, it's sort of like a bit kitschy with Roblox and brands getting involved and trying to kind of like, basically using it as a branding opportunity. But I think like the advent of like Apple Glass, their like new AR tech, I think that's going to be very exciting. And I think if you think about metaverse in the future, again, you're looking, you have to look several years in the future to how that's going to work. But, I think, as that tech gets better, that's going to make a theoretical, more fluid metaverse a reality as well.
In the kindest way possible. I'm very old school. I'm not kind of looking at this at all like our game is a premium model. It's like a very traditional way. You buy the game, you keep the game, that's it sort of thing. So obviously I'm like keeping an eye on all of these conversations and stuff like that, but I'm so old school. I'm just like the traditional simple model of, you buy the game and own it. But yeah, it's interesting. I've seen so many extremely heated conversations about NFTs from game developers and blockchain and et cetera, et cetera. So power to people in that space. to deal with that. But yeah, I'm not keen personally, but it's always going to be interesting to see what people do with that in the future.
I guess that's like the really nice thing about it, right? I think all of these crypto based on blockchain games are actually going to monetize in a bit more of an efficient way. You're not going to need hundreds, thousands, millions of players. You might need more like, a few thousand who are going to uphold an economy, and the wider games industry is going to prevail, right? There's still going to be a massive amount of demand for traditional mobile or console or PC games, and this isn't going to replace everything, right? It's just growing that that wider pie.
Yeah.
I like to throw in that you remember games, that the beauty of games is that it is at the epicenter of technology and creativity, is where we sit. We are always going to come up with great innovations and new things and new ideas and new ways to engage our consumers. Ultimately, our consumers will decide, because they'll either buy the stuff and stick in our communities or not. So ultimately they will decide, but our industry is genuinely innovative. When you look at the other creative industries and the challenges they face, they don't have the digital delivery methods that we have in place that enable games to trade even when there are challenges in the marketplace. We are the innovators, and I look at I look at some of the companies on the list here that you've got, Richard. I'm not going to name any of them because I don't know if I'm allowed to, but
no, not yet.
But they've got that amazing ability to identify opportunities in the market and develop technologies in a creative way and make it fun and entertaining. That's why they're on the list. It's brilliant. We're in a great place.
Yeah. Well, that brings us quite nicely on to sort of the future of gaming. And one of the things that I wanted to put out to all of you really is, do you think the smaller independent games companies will continue to thrive moving forward? I know there's obviously a lot of M&A activity, which is kind of positive from investment and coming into the industry point of view. But then is there going to be that consolidation of small companies by large companies? So yeah, I don't know who wants to come in on that first, but I imagine you've all got an opinion on it.
Say that I think some of the things that has been a theme throughout the talks today has been a lack of funding for certain companies at certain times, and I'm seeing people having discussions about that very early on. So things like prototype funding, the UK Games Fund is doing a lot of great work in that area as well. And so I feel like having more of those avenues for investment will mean that there are more companies with diverse founders as well. I think that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing, is these kind of new funding pots growing, and that means new companies will pop up. And I spent most of my career in AAA. I'm always interested to see what AAA are doing. They have the money to take big risks. So I'm always curious as to what's going to be next for AAA as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned like the UK Games Fund and some of the other sort of support that's available for those really early stage sort of studios. Sam, maybe, or anyone else, do you think there's a need for more support and perhaps Ollie, more private sector support at the earlier stage? Because like you say, I think Bobby said earlier that only 2% of games companies are receiving investment or something like that. So it sounds as if there is still a need for more schemes to be introduced if these smaller studios are going to thrive.
So yeah, I'll take that one first if that's all right, and then hand over to you, Ollie. There's a couple of things here. The future of indies. Are there too many indie studios in the UK? A very famous developer said to me not long ago there should be a cull of indie studios. I didn't agree with it, but certainly when you look at the number of studios we've got in the UK, there's 2,300 games companies in the UK. There are much larger markets that, the United States don't have many more studios than that. Why do we have so many studios here? It's because we've got this energy and this enthusiasm and creativity that we want to go out and do things. There are two things I want to throw in. Sorry, that was a bit waffly. One, there's been an increase in scale-up and accelerator programs specifically made for games companies in the UK in the last 18 months. That needs to grow and continue. It's all well and good having lots of companies, and it's all well and good saying that sometimes the investment is there and sometimes it's a challenge. Well, those companies have got to be ready for investment. We need to make sure that our smaller studios know how to speak to investors, what they're looking for, that they fully understand the landscape, and then can take advantage of it, or they will fail. So don't underestimate the importance of those kinds of programs going forward. Secondly, there are lots of studios being acquired by overseas investors. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? There are two ways of looking at it, no doubt about it. I'm fairly neutral on it, to be honest. I think if we've got an investor wanting to invest somewhere, I'd rather invest it in the UK than any other market. But it does put extra pressure on us as an industry to make sure that we have plenty of indie studios that are getting that support to become the next major growth studio. I don't mind if a studio is bought, as long as we think there's plenty, 5 or 6 new studios coming through that are going to be exponentially growing in the future. So they may get that investment, but we need to keep having an independent UK game scene that we're supporting. So we need a lot more support in that area. There's no doubt about it. I didn't answer your question, but I just wanted to go on about that, if that's all right.
No, I think you did. It actually brings us nicely on to, obviously, the last thing that I really wanted to throw into the mix, which was obviously the games industry is a global industry. The UK is just one of many players in it. So I guess, do you think that moving forward is the sort of the makeup of the UK game sector in terms of the mix of independent, small scale studios and sort of growing studios, and obviously the AAA? Have we got the right mix of companies in the sector to continue to be a global player in the industry? I don't know who wants to come in on that one first. Oliver, maybe I'll put you on the spot. Do you think the UK is going to continue to play a leading role in the expansion of the global games industry?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think one of the things Ian touched on earlier as well is around like the EIS SAS scheme, abilities for people to set up and gain some initial funding, and some great initiatives coming through. Obviously, more work can be done, of course, but like the ease and relative to maybe other countries in setting up, incorporating companies and attracting investment in the early days is like really, really beneficial for a lot of founders in this space, and that's why I'm really long on the UK, and I think there's a really great emergent ecosystem that's still retained here, and not just in London, but across the UK, and lots of sub hubs, which is brilliant. So I can't see that really changing. I think, yeah, obviously there's now consolidation occurring at the top end of the market, but additional steps forward being taken in like remote work and things like that I think are going to be longer term trends here, mean that we're going to keep more local talent in the UK, even if they are working for big kind of US based companies nowadays, and that's only good as well.
Perfect.
I think just to jump in on that, I think yes, the UK is positioned well to grow further. I think we've kind of really touched on some of the issues that are really going to hold it back if they aren't changed. I think what Sally said in terms of the UK Games Fund is incredible. I mean, I think, but it needs more funds. It needs better support. Really, I think I would love to see more kind of like support and funding for indies at the lower end. And you started off talking about access to talent and immigration, and I didn't chip in at the time, but I'm glad it's sort of like come full circle now. I think actually, that's going to be a big issue in stopping UK companies growing. There's obviously talk the government's going to overhaul kind of like the immigration regime. I didn't want to use the B word, but naturally Brexit, as soon as you kind of like put the walls up and you put the gates up and you stop a free movement of people from, all of our neighbours on the European continent, that's naturally going to lead to issues. And it's something that they haven't solved yet. And I think that's something that is definitely going to be, needs to be solved in terms of an access to talent for UK companies, because I think there's a lot of great things happening with UK universities and, lots of good game design courses that are helping, plug the skills gap at the junior sort of end. But I think like the immigration kind of like regime really needs sort of a bit of an overhaul to make things easier for, for an industry that is obviously going to be massive for the UK success economically going forward as well. And yeah, I think that's going to be kind of a big deal. So yes, but I think with caveats. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. No, I think that's quite a good place for us to end, Tim. We've got this enormous opportunity at the moment in the UK games industry, but particularly headwinds around access to talent and access to finance, which I think sort of need to be a bit further resolved. But overall, really, really positive stuff. So, well, thanks so much for your contribution, guys. I've really enjoyed that discussion. I'm sure everyone listening has as well. We'll leave it there if we can, as I think it's almost time to reveal the index. So I don't know if someone in the background is going to set that up for us. I believe we've got a video that we're going to play, and that's going to reveal which companies have made it into the index. And then we're going to be speaking to two of them shortly afterwards as well. So if we're all ready with the video, let's just sit back and watch that. Well, there you have it. There's the 41 amazing companies that made it into this year's Metagames Industry Index. And you can read all about them in our index publication, which will be circulating far and wide following today's event. Please do have a read of that publication, as well as having the index in there. There's also tons of advice and expert insights to help games businesses succeed. We've got videos, podcasts, and written articles all embedded into that publication. So we'll be sure to circulate that with you shortly. And I think there'll be a link getting posted in the discussion forum as well, where you can go and view that. But for now, I'm joined by two of the companies that made it into this year's index. So we've got Alex Kanaris-Sotiriou, who is the founder and creative director of Polygon Treehouse, and Jo Haslam, who's the design director of Snap Finger Click. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, both of you guys, Snap Finger Click and Polygon Treehouse, was singled out and really impressed our judges. And there's some video interviews with you guys that I know, thank you for taking part in, that are in the index publication as well. So yeah, welcome both. And we're just going to chat through how you guys feel about being included in the index, and also talk a little bit about the businesses that you represent as well. So Alex, coming to you first, just initially, how does it feel to kind of be included in the Metagames Index?
Really cool, and it's awesome to see the full list. It's in the video. That's a very prestigious company indeed. We always feel like we're at the small fry, so yeah, we're really delighted to be included, and obviously it's a really nice thing for the UK games industry to have as well.
Perfect. And can you just tell me a little bit about Polygon Treehouse as well, and sort of the games that you guys make, a little bit of the history of the company and things like that?
Sure. So we were founded in Cambridge after the closure of Guerrilla Cambridge, the Sony studio, and me and Tom wanted to make non-violent narrative games. So we decided to, rather than going to another big studio, to start our own company. And we've made one game so far called Röki, which is a art-led narrative adventure game, and seems to be quite good. It's been nominated for a couple of BAFTAs, and people seem to enjoy it, and it's given us kind of the first step into the kind of market, I guess, for our studio and where we take it next.
Perfect. And Joanna, welcome. Same question to you. How does it feel to be included in the index?
Yeah, great. I mean, we're so happy to be recognized. We've been going for 6 years now, and it feels like, yeah, we've made it. We're finally a successful business, and to be part of the reveal is so exciting. And yeah, like Alex said, to see all the other companies that made it, because I had no idea who was on the list, and it's really nice to see some that I recognize. We're just really thankful and grateful for people's support, and yeah, again, as Alex said, this is really great for the UK games industry to start lifting up some of the indies and helping them to stand out a bit more. Yeah, I think I love indies, I love indie development, so we're really happy about it.
Perfect. And just talk a little bit, Joanna, about Snap Finger Click as well. I don't know if you want to start with how long you've been with the company, the games that you guys have made. Just take us through that sort of journey that you've been on as well.
Yeah, so we founded at the end of 2015, and I've been there myself. I've been there for about 5 years, but I was kind of there at the beginning anyway. It's one of those things where there was a group of us, we were trying to get a studio off the ground, and a couple of people kind of quit their day jobs to get things going, and I was sort of helping on the side for a while until things started to ramp up enough that we felt that we could all kind of quit our day jobs. But it's we make games that are made for people to play together. That's what we do. So everything is always about bringing people together and socializing. We've done 5 games so far. Our biggest one was probably last year. We worked with Ubisoft on a version of Family Feud, which is like our Family Fortunes kind of game. And we also have Twitch in all of our games. So all of our games you can play on Twitch. The viewers can type directly into the chat and interact with the game and play along that way. So that's also been really cool for us, because we've been seeing how socializing has been changing, especially with COVID over the last year, and people wanting ways to play together in different forms, and bringing that kind of socialization online, but in a friendly way that's not like traditional online kind of super competitive type games, but more laid back and chilled and chatting. So that's our thing, and that's what we do, and we're all really passionate about it.
Yeah, great. No, I was really pleased that it was going to be both of you guys doing this sort of reaction piece, because obviously, Alex, you guys are very much in that sort of narrative adventure game space, and Jo, you guys are more online multiplayer party games. So I think it really speaks to the sort of the diversity of game makers in the UK. So yeah, great to be with you both. In terms of highlights, now obviously the biggest highlight's going to be being included in the Meta Games Index. But Alex, do you want to just talk a little bit about some of the other highlights that the Polygon Treehouse has had?
Well, I think I touched on a few earlier. So we've been quite lucky. Obviously, when you're working on a game, you get a bit blind to it sometimes. So we weren't quite sure what to expect when we launched. But yeah, we were nominated for Best Debut Game at the Game Awards, and then nominated for Best British Game and Best Debut Game at the BAFTAs. We won a whole load of Aggies, which are like the Adventure Game Awards, and yes, there's been a whole load of things. I think that's the kind of like they're the kind of big fireworky ones. I think the thing that's like personally the has been the reaction from players to the story and the emotional impact of the story of the game we've made. I think that's the one that kind of really kind of shocked and very humbled and grateful for, to see that players reaching out to tell us what the story meant to them and how it resonated with them and their lives and their circumstances. So that's the kind of one where you go, oh yeah, it's all worth it. Good.
Yeah, because I guess when you're making narrative games, like that's really what the benchmark for success is, isn't it? To connect with the player on that level, and for them to become invested in the narrative.
Yeah, I think it's a certain level, just a different level of engagement, and I think yeah, so I think that's given us, because it's our first time. We both, me and Tom both came from an art background, and it's our first time designing a game and helping to forge the story ourselves. So for us, it was a real kind of sign of confidence that this is something we can do, and there's a great potential in the types of games we want to make for the future.
Perfect. And Jo, in terms of highlights for you guys, I know you've obviously got, is it 6? You've got 6 titles out now, is that right?
Technically 6. I think it's more like 5, because one of them was a kind of a remix of the previous one. But yeah, we've got quite a few things out there. We've got a kind of range of games. Some of our games are really small and simple, and then we've got the bigger ones going on. We've had a couple of awards the last few months as well, which is always really exciting and flattering. We got invited to the Sussex Business Awards in December. We didn't win, but we were nominated for Best Innovation, and that was really exciting. It was this really fancy event presented by a comedian. You know, it was all it's not something we were used to at all, so we were really happy to be there. We also won the Games Industry Biz Best Places to Work. We were one of the companies that won that, and we're really super proud of that, because obviously, like, we love the games that we make and what we do, but having a nice place to work is also really important to us as well. A lot of us who kind of founded the company, we really wanted to do things a bit better and a bit different. You know, I'm a mum, and I've always been frustrated by how hard it is to find a good job in the industry that doesn't, you know, it's always 9 to 5 and Monday to Friday in the office. It's really hard for some people to be able to commit to that. So we founded the studio on being able to choose your own hours and be super flexible and not necessarily full time, and that's worked really well for us, because we've been able to bring people in, to, you know, really talented people who just can't do sort of regular 9 to 5 hours. So we're really happy to be recognized for that as well. I guess in terms of our games, there's a game that our franchise we have called Awkward, which was a game we made 4 years ago now, but it's been really popular with our community, and especially over COVID, we've had a lot of people reaching out to us to tell us about how they used it as a way to stay in touch with their friends. It basically just gamifies conversation. So it asks you a question: would you, if you were in this situation, would you do this or that? What do you think is more important, A or B? It's always a kind of binary choice, but it's very sparks a lot of conversation. And we found someone recently playing it on Twitch, and he'd been playing it for 10 hours straight, which was just incredible. I just can't believe someone can get that much enjoyment out of one of our games. But we're working hard on that franchise to develop it, and we've just released a Kickstarter, which was successful. So we're doing a physical version of it now with cards that people can play as a kind of tabletop game, and that's really exciting for us. We've never done anything like it before, but it seems to be going really well so far.
Perfect. You did briefly mention COVID there, Jo, and I wasn't going to, but I think it is important just to you know, when you run a small business, it's difficult at best of times, even if things are going well. So, Alex, you first. You know, I know you moved to Dundee. Was that a COVID related decision? Was that or how have the last sort of couple of years sort of been when you've been trying to set up this studio?
So we've been very, very fortunate in terms of the impact that COVID has had in our studio, and the fact that, you know, we're a small team, we're all working remotely anyway. So we've been very, very fortunate that the kind of impact has been minimal compared to other studios. So in terms of the move to Dundee, I'm guessing partly there was a number of different factors, but part of it was being able to get from Cambridge to Dundee, having some more room to spread out, so I'm not walking around the Cambridge Science Park again and again and again. So yeah, and also, you know, getting some mountains and lots of a new place to explore. You know, we had a really great time in Cambridge, but yeah, time for a change, and really excited about being in Dundee in Scotland. So yeah, we have been very fortunate in the amount of impact that COVID has had. Obviously, there's been, when we were launching the game, there wasn't any physical events, but actually there was a big rise of all the kind of the digital showcases, and actually we were quite fortunate in being picked up as part of the first, you know, to be asked to participate in the first Steam festival. That was, and there was only a few games in that one, so that really gave us a massive chunk of wish list. So yeah, so obviously there's ups and downs, but we have been very fortunate from that point of view.
Yeah, I think because you had that kind of agile business model anyway, that served you quite well when every other company had to do the same. Brilliant. And Jo, in terms of your experience over the last couple of years as well, did that help sort of bring along any sort of workplace changes that you'd wanted to implement, or did you already have a pretty good setup over at Snap Finger Click?
Yeah, we were already really well set up to deal with working from home. There was definitely a few challenges that we had to sort of navigate, particularly when we were working with Ubisoft. And whenever you work with a big company like that, there's lots of rules and security, whitelisting and things like that. So we had to set up a few things within our office that people could remote into. But generally, it was fairly smooth for us compared with, I think, a lot of other studios. I think the hardest thing was that some people just like to be in the office, and they obviously missed that kind of socializing side of it, and that routine of going in, because I personally like to do a bit of both. I like to go in a couple of times a week and work from home the rest of the time, just have that kind of flexibility. And I think that's what most people sort of prefer. But yeah, we were lucky in that it wasn't a big impact on us, and actually, the sales of our games really rocketed during COVID because of the nature of our games. So that was a sort of unexpected consequence for us. But I do think, it was obviously an awful time, but it is going to help change the way that a lot of studios run. It's really shown the bigger studios, especially, that it can be done. There are ways to sort of set this up, and I think it's given a lot of power back to the staff who work for these companies. They know that they don't have to rely on being there in the office all the time. They can easily negotiate with their companies ways to work from home, and I think that's better for everybody. It makes the industry a lot more accessible, and that means it will lead to more diverse teams as well, which is really important.
Yeah, of course. I just want to come on to kind of aspirations for the future and the kind of what's next question. So, because I know that for both of you, haven't spoken to you previously, it's kind of about sustainable growth rather than exponential. I think, Alex, I know you've said that the motivation for you setting up Polygon Treehouse wasn't to try and become this like huge AAA. You just want to be really well known for the types of games that you make. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm guessing with one of the things that comes from like developing a game with smaller teams is there's more of the you can see more of the person reflected in the game. And there definitely is. I think I've really enjoyed my time at PlayStation and Guerrilla Games, but now, especially with Rookie, seen as it's something really nice from an individual like creative point of view of making something where it's a much more of a personal expression of how you'd like to change the world or what you'd like to see, and that's really good. And I don't think I ever really want to lose that. I was kind of an art director for a lead artist for a number of years, and there's something that I've really enjoyed about going back to creating animations and characters where I was at a distance for that stuff for a while. So for us, it's been about taking those experiences and practices we've learned in AAA and how we apply them to kind of the kind of art-led narrative games that we want to make. And I think and to see where we can go with those games and that impact around the world. And yeah, I think our focuses are, rather than like growing the business in terms of headcount and people, we want to grow our business in terms of impact and like the reach of our games and the amount of people that play them and can connect with them.
Yeah, and obviously following the success of Roki, so is there another title in the pipeline? You're not able to tell us anything about that yet? Nope.
So we are working on Project 2, and we're very, very excited about it. It is a kind of an evolution of the DNA Polygon Treehouse DNA, but it definitely still is an art-led narrative game. So yeah, we're really excited to be able to share it with people once it's ready.
Okay. I won't pry. And Joanna, in terms of you guys over at Snap Finger Click, because I know you haven't really taken any external investment to grow the business over the years. You're a self-funded business. You operate using the returns of the games that you make. So yeah, do you want to just talk a little bit about that kind of business model that you guys have, and then again maybe what your plans are for the future as well?
Yeah, so as you say, we have no external investors. We've just built ourselves up from the ground, really. Our strategy so far has been to mix work for hire with our own games. And I think our ultimate goal really is to be self-sustainable, to have enough of our own games that we've got enough money coming in that we don't always need to rely on grabbing a work for hire project. But so far we kind of flip between them, and it's working really well for us. As Alex similar says, we don't want to grow into a huge company either. We really like being an indie. We like being a small team. I think we'd like to grow a bit more, but that just still stay relatively small, because I think once you get over a certain size, it becomes really hard to communicate with each other and to put the same sort of level of love into the games as that you can at a bigger studio when everything's a lot more kind of spread out. In terms of what we're doing in the future, we've got 2 projects on at the moment. One I can tell you about and one I can't tell you about. The one I can't tell you about, we're currently working on. It'll be out at some point later in this year, and that's all I can really say. But we're working on a sequel to our Awkward game called Awkward 2. We did briefly consider calling it Too Awkward, but we decided to stick with Awkward 2. But yeah, it's really just trying to do a much bigger version of our original game and really bring it out as a much more polished, more exciting kind of party experience. The original game was really made on such a tiny budget. I think we spent about 50k on the original game, so it's like such a small game. For the sequel, we really want to bring the production values up, so we're doing a lot more kind of variety on it. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's just like every time I play the build, I just have this big smile on my face. I feel so excited about what we're doing with it. And because the game has this really passionate fan base already, which really shocked us and surprised us, because we just thought it was just this really small game, but there are a lot of people out there that really love it. And I think it's because it really does open you up to talking about conversations that you wouldn't normally have. So for some people, they just really enjoy that, and they can be playing it for hours. So we're trying to really hone in on what people love about it and build on that and make it just even more fun to play. So that should be coming out later this year. And yeah, we're sort of drip feeding little reveals here and there on our social media about it. So we're being fairly open about that because that's our project, so we can talk about it. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to reveal more news on that soon.
Yeah, no, it sounds like both of you have some sort of really exciting projects in the pipeline. So that's really good to hear. So just to sort of finish off, really, in terms of advice for other games founders, we had a number of entrants into the index who didn't quite make the cut for the index, but have been put down as ones to watch for next year. And so, in terms of the success that you guys have had, what do you attribute that to? Maybe thinking about the most important things when you start in a studio to sort of get right. So Joanna, I'll ask you first on that. Advice for other games founders who are starting out.
Yeah, I think it's just just tread carefully. I think is my best piece of advice, because it's starting a studio, it's really overwhelming, and you're gonna bump into things that you've never had to deal with before. And as much as you think you've prepared for it, and as many questions as you've asked before, there's always going to be things that you don't expect. So I think start small and slow and build your way up, and don't take unnecessary risks. Don't just quit your day job from one day to another and go, right, I'm starting a studio, I've got no money and no investment. Like, don't do that. If you've got a couple of you, if there's a little group of you that want to do something, start doing it maybe like in your sort of spare time. Start building up, and don't start with like your dream game either. I would say, like, start with something a bit more small and focused, because if you've had this long dream for a long time about building this game that you've really wanted to do, it's going to be hard to uncouple those hard business decisions from the sort of creative side. So I think save that bigger game for like your next one or the one after. Pick something kind of very focused, quite small but good, polished. Focus on that, set yourself a goal, set yourself budget, target, and see what you can do. And on the side, you can do all those other things that advice from this morning, try and get investment, pitch, talk to publishers, talk to investors. You can do all of that at the same time. But I think getting yourselves a reputation is really important. Showing that you can make a game, you can ship a game, you've got a game to show someone. All of that stuff is really valuable, and it helps get you off the ground. And if you don't get any investors, then you've got something that's potentially making money for you until you're in a position where you can ramp up.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice, particularly around sort of managing risk and being realistic. Obviously, having that passion that you need to have to think that you're going to revolutionize the marketplace, but also being realistic about the steps that you need to take to get there. So, Alex, in terms of your experience as well, things to do, things not to do at those earlier stages.
I think that was really great advice, and so I fully endorse all of that. So in addition, I'm guessing like my couple of things, they're kind of all interlinked. One's about identifying your strengths, like what are your strengths, and making sure you're playing to them. Like if you can't model a car, you probably shouldn't be making a racing game. So I think that's a really important thing, like to not get swayed by what other people are doing, to kind of focus on you and your own strengths and making sure you're making the most of them. And tying into that, I guess, is a sense of like studio identity, and kind of brand's a bit icky word, but like studio identity, like what type of games you want to make. Can you take a step back and go, well, actually, rather than just focusing on this game, what kind of games do we want to make? And I think then as you release more games and take on more projects, there's a common thread running through, so you're able to kind of attract people to your you're interested in your studio and the community around your studio. That kind of feels like it's got some direction, cohesive. I think that but definitely playing to your strengths and working smart rather than working hard. I'm sure everyone will be working hard as well, but making sure that you have good creative solutions to things, and you're not just you're not just biting off more than you can chew. And really, the nice thing about creative endeavors in general is that you don't necessarily have to limit the types of stories you want to tell. They can still be really epic. Maybe you'll just have to be a little bit smarter and a bit more creative about how you go about telling them.
Yeah, no, I think having that really strong studio identity and that vision, a really, really important piece of the puzzle, Alex. So, okay, well, thanks both so much for taking part in that discussion, and congratulations again for being included in the index as well, and good luck for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. It's been great.
Perfect. Okay, well, that actually brings us to the end of the kind of formal festivities today. We're going to leave things open for some networking. There should be a button somewhere on your screen to jump back into the chat rooms if you'd like to do that. But before you disappear off, just a reminder, we will be putting out the full index publication to all attendees, and shouting about it all over social media. So please do have a read when you receive that. Also, if there's any business owners attending the event today who want to find out more about UMI's business support services, please do register for a free trial of the UMI platform. I'm happy to announce that all companies included in the Metagames Index will receive a free 6-month trial of the platform. So, strongly recommend taking advantage of that. So thanks so much for your participation today, guys. Thanks to all our speakers and panelists. They were absolutely brilliant. And please do stay in touch with us as well. I mentioned the social handles earlier at MetagamesIndex_. We are looking to run this campaign again in 2022. So watch this space and keep your eyes peeled for any of those announcements. Okay, so thanks again, everybody, and take care.